The rain fell like God's judgment, and Laura Smith's scholarship was dying with every second that ticked past on her cracked phone screen. 6:47 a.m. The final exam started at 7 a.m. 13 minutes to cross a city that suddenly felt like it was built specifically to destroy her. Her alarm had failed. The campus shuttle had been rerouted for construction, and her worn Converse sneakers, held together with duct tape and prayers, were already soaked through as she sprinted down Riverside Avenue. Her navy blue hoodie clung to her skin like a second layer of failure. The anatomy textbook in her backpack felt like it weighed 100 pounds. 3 years of pre-med condensed into one test that would determine if she stayed at the university or went back to working double shifts at the diner where dreams went to die. She ran harder. People stared as she passed. A young black woman with a wild afro running through the rain in student clothes was apparently still something worth gawking at in this neighborhood. Laura had learned to ignore those looks in the 2 years since she'd transferred here on a full ride that required her to maintain a 3.8 GPA. One B could cost her everything. One missed exam could erase her completely. And she was about to miss her exam. Her mother's voice echoed in her head from their last phone call. "Baby, you're gonna be the first doctor in our family. Your grandmama didn't live to see it, but you're gonna make it." The weight of that legacy pressed down on Laura's chest harder than the rain, harder than the textbook, harder than the knowledge that she'd be serving pancakes instead of saving lives if she didn't make it to that lecture hall. The shortcut through the industrial district would save her 4 minutes, maybe 5. Laura veered left into the network of alleys between the old warehouses, her feet splashing through puddles that reflected nothing but gray sky. The narrow passage smelled like rust and rotting garbage, but it was empty, and empty meant fast. That's when she heard it. Not a cry, something worse. The wet, desperate sound of someone drowning on dry land. Laura's feet slowed before her brain could stop them. Every practical cell in her body screamed at her to keep running. She checked her phone with shaking hands. 6:51 a.m. 9 minutes to everything she'd worked for. 9 minutes to honor her grandmother's memory. 9 minutes to prove she wasn't just another statistic, another black girl who almost made it. The woman's lips were turning blue. Laura dropped to her knees in the filthy water pooling around the woman's body, her backpack hitting the ground with a wet thud. Her hands moved on instinct, checking for a pulse, tilting the woman's head back, feeling for breathing patterns. 3 years of pre-med crystallizing into this single moment in a garbage-strewn alley that smelled like despair. "Ma'am, can you hear me? I need you to stay with me." The woman's eyes fluttered open, dark and unfocused and absolutely terrified. Her fingers wrapped around Laura's wrist with surprising strength, nails digging into skin like she was holding on to a lifeline in a storm. Laura's phone screen went dark. 6:54 a.m. She made her choice. Welcome to Afro Soul's Storybook. Subscribe to watch more of our daily stories and comment where you're watching. The woman's breathing was all wrong, shallow, rapid, with a wheeze that sounded like air struggling through a straw. Laura's hands moved faster, checking vitals the way her emergency response training had drilled into her. Pulse thready and irregular, skin cold and clammy despite the woman's obvious panic. Classic signs of a cardiac event or severe anxiety attack, possibly both. "I need you to breathe with me," Laura said, her voice cutting through the rain with a steadiness she didn't feel. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. Can you do that for me?" The woman's eyes locked onto hers, still terrified but desperate for an anchor. She tried to follow Laura's instructions, her chest hitching with the effort. Laura positioned her carefully, supporting her back against the wall to open her airways. Her pre-med training said this could be angina, a panic attack, or the opening act of something catastrophic. She needed to call 911, but her phone had finally died, the screen refusing to light up no matter how many times she pressed the power button. "Does your chest hurt? Can you point to where?" Laura asked, watching the woman's face for signs of comprehension. The woman tapped her sternum with trembling fingers, then gestured outward, the classic radiation pattern of cardiac pain. but her pupils were dilated with panic, and her breathing was responding to Laura's coaching, which suggested anxiety was at least part of the equation. Laura shrugged off her hoodie, ignoring the immediate assault of cold rain on her t-shirt, and wrapped it around the woman's shoulders. The gray coat was expensive but thin, doing nothing against the elements. She needed to keep her warm, keep her calm, keep her alive until help arrived. But how was help supposed to arrive? No phone, no people, just this forgotten alley, and a woman who looked like she'd wandered into the wrong postcode of reality. "What's your name?" Laura tried, speaking slowly and clearly. The woman's lips moved. Min-seo. Min-seo. That's beautiful. I'm Laura. You're going to be okay, Min-seo. I promise you're going to be okay. It was a promise she had no right to make, but it was the only thing she had to give. Time became meaningless. Laura stayed there in the rain, one hand on Min-seo's pulse, the other providing steady pressure on her back, talking her through breathing exercises, monitoring every shift in her condition. The test was gone, the scholarship was probably gone, her future was evaporating with every passing minute, but the woman's breathing was evening out, her color was returning, and Laura couldn't bring herself to regret the choice. She'd become a doctor to save lives. Maybe she just started earlier than planned. The headlights came without warning. One moment the alley was empty except for the rain and the shadows. The next it was flooded with harsh white light that turned the puddles into mirrors. Laura threw up a hand to shield her eyes, her heart suddenly hammering against her ribs. Car doors opened in perfect synchronization. The sound of expensive shoes on wet pavement echoed off the brick walls. And then they appeared. Men in dark suits that probably cost more than Laura's entire education, moving with the kind of precision that had nothing to do with corporate boardrooms and everything to do with violence. They fanned out, surrounding her and Min-seo like they were securing a hostile perimeter. Laura's mouth went dry. Her arms instinctively tightened around the older woman, who had gone completely still against her. Then he stepped into the light. He moved like a shark cutting through water, smooth, inevitable, lethal. Charcoal three-piece suit tailored so precisely it looked like it had been painted onto his frame. Silk tie that probably cost more than Laura's rent. His face was all sharp angles and colder eyes, the kind of face that made you understand why prey animals evolved to freeze when predators approached. Lee Ye-jun didn't look like he'd come to say thank you. He looked like he'd come to erase a problem. He crossed the distance between them in 4 strides, and before Laura could speak, before she could explain, his hand shot out and locked around her throat. Not choking, not yet, but the threat was clear. One wrong word and he could collapse her windpipe like aluminum foil. Laura's back slammed against the brick wall, Min-seo sliding from her arms as 2 of the suited men caught the older woman with a gentleness that contradicted everything else about this situation. Ye-jun's face was inches from hers now, and his eyes were empty of everything except the cold mathematics of determining whether she lived or died. "What did you do to her?" His voice was quiet, controlled. Somehow that made it worse than if he'd been screaming. Her voice cracked. She forced herself to breathe, forced herself to meet those terrifying eyes. She was having some kind of attack. "I stayed with her." "You stayed with her." He repeated it like he was testing the words for lies. "In this alley, alone. How convenient." "I missed my exam to stay with her. I don't know who you think I am, but I was trying to help." "People don't help in this city. They take." His grip tightened fractionally. "So I'll ask you again, and this time I want the truth. What did you do?" One of the men called out in Korean, urgent and worried. Ye-jun's eyes flicked away for half a second, just long enough for Laura to see them carrying Min-seo toward one of the black SUVs with the kind of careful efficiency that spoke of practice. "I kept her breathing. I kept her calm. I did my job, which is apparently more than your people did, by letting her end up in an alley having a medical emergency in the first place." The words were out before she could stop them. Survival instinct screamed at her to shut up, to apologize, to do anything except antagonize the man who clearly had the power to make her disappear. But watching them load Min-seo into the vehicle, seeing the woman who'd clung to her like a lifeline being taken away without so much as a thank you, something in Laura refused to cower. Yejun's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Calculation, reassessment. "Search her," he said, releasing her throat and stepping back. Hands patted her down with professional efficiency, checking pockets, checking her backpack, even checking the lining of her soaked jeans. They found her dead phone, her expired student ID, a crumpled $20 bill that was supposed to last her until Friday, and the anatomy textbook that was now waterlogged and probably ruined. One of the men held up her campus ID to Yejun. "Pre-med student, 3rd year. No weapons, no wire." Yejun took the ID, studying it with the same intensity he'd used to study her face. Laura watched his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. "Get in the car," he said. "What?" "You heard me. Get in the car." "I'm not getting in any car with you people," Laura said, pushing away from the wall despite her shaking legs. "I helped whoever she is. I'm going home." "You're coming to the hospital to explain exactly what happened. Then we'll decide if you're going home." It wasn't a request. Laura looked at the men surrounding her, at the vehicles idling with their engines purring like satisfied cats, at Yejun's face that promised absolute zero room for negotiation. She looked down at her ruined shoes, her soaked clothes, her backpack with the textbook she'd probably never get to use. She got in the car. The hospital was private, the kind of private that didn't advertise, didn't accept insurance, and definitely didn't ask questions about how people acquired their injuries. Laura sat in a leather chair that cost more than her scholarship, while doctors in pristine white coats moved around Min-seo's room like choreographed dancers. Yejun stood at the window, his back to Laura, his phone pressed to his ear. He spoke in rapid Korean, sometimes angry, sometimes cold, always controlled. Laura caught enough to understand he was tearing someone apart for security failures, for incompetence, for putting his mother in danger. His mother. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. The expensive coat, the suited men, the private hospital, the absolute authority with which this man moved through the world. Min-seo wasn't just some lost elderly woman, she was the mother of someone very, very dangerous, and Laura had just saved her life while simultaneously ruining her own. A doctor emerged from Min-seo's room, speaking quietly with Yejun. Laura caught fragments: stable, severe panic attack, minor cardiac episode, preventative measures. Yejun listened without expression, then dismissed the doctor with a single nod. He turned to Laura. "She wants to see you." Min-seo looked smaller in the hospital bed, but her eyes were clear now, focused. The terror had been replaced with something else, a sharp intelligence that made Laura understand this woman had been dangerous once, maybe still was. She gestured for Laura to come closer, her movements weak but deliberate. "You stayed. You missed something important to stay." It wasn't a question. "How did you—" "Your bag, textbook, test preparation notes." Min-seo's smile was sad. "My son has already called the university. You missed your pharmacology final. They will not let you retake it. Your scholarship requires a minimum grade in all courses. You will lose everything." The words hit Laura like bullets. She'd known it, of course, but hearing it said out loud in this sterile room that smelled of antiseptic and old money made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "It was the right thing to do," Laura said quietly. "The right thing," Min-seo repeated, and now her smile held something that might have been approval or might have been pity. "Tell my son. Tell him, this girl is the only reason I am breathing." Yejun stepped forward from where he'd been standing in the shadows. His expression was still unreadable, but something had shifted. The murderous intent was gone, replaced by something Laura couldn't quite identify. "I need to speak with you. Outside." They stood in the hallway with its gleaming floors and hushed efficiency. Yejun looked at her for a long moment, and Laura fought the urge to fidget under that intense scrutiny. "You sacrificed your future for my mother's life," he said finally. "I didn't know she was your mother, I just knew she needed help." "That makes it worse." He pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke in Korean too quickly for Laura to follow. When he hung up, his eyes found hers again. "You have a debt now, whether you want it or not. I don't want anything from you." "I wasn't asking what you wanted." His voice was flat, final. "My mother is alive because of you. That creates an obligation. In my world, debts must be repaid. Then we're even. You drove me to the hospital, debt repaid, we're done." Yejun almost smiled. It was terrifying. "We're nowhere close to done, Laura Smith." The university email arrived 3 days later. Academic probation, loss of scholarship, 2 weeks to clear out her student housing. The words blurred together on the screen of her borrowed laptop, each one a nail in the coffin of everything she'd worked for. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" "Miss Smith, this is Dean Whitmore from the medical college. I'm calling regarding your academic status." Laura's stomach dropped. "Dean Whitmore, I was just about to request a meeting to discuss—" "That won't be necessary. I'm pleased to inform you that an anonymous benefactor has made a substantial donation to the university's medical program. As part of this donation, your scholarship has been reinstated and your missed examination has been waived. You'll be returning to good standing effective immediately." The words didn't make sense. Laura's brain refused to process them. "I don't understand. Who—" "The benefactor wishes to remain anonymous. However, there is one condition." The dean's voice took on an odd quality, not quite nervous, but definitely careful. "You'll need to meet with their representative to discuss the terms of the donation. They're quite insistent on certain security arrangements." Laura's blood ran cold. "What kind of security arrangements?" "I suggest you take the meeting, Miss Smith. The representative is waiting for you in the administration building, Office 401. The line went dead. Office 401 wasn't an office. It was a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the campus, the kind of space reserved for major donors and board members. And standing at the window, hands in his pockets, looking like he owned the entire building, which Laura was beginning to suspect he might, was Lee Ye-jun. "You bought the medical building," Laura said flatly. "I bought a significant portion of the university's debt and made a donation that will fund scholarships for the next decade. The medical building was a side benefit." He turned to face her. "Your scholarship is reinstated, your missed exam is forgiven, your academic future is secure. What's the catch? You move into my house, under my protection, until I'm satisfied the debt is properly repaid." Laura laughed. It was the kind of laugh that bordered on hysteria. "You're insane. I'm not moving into your house. You are, or you lose the scholarship, again, permanently this time. That's blackmail. That's reality." Ye-jun stepped closer, and Laura forced herself not to back away. "My mother nearly died because my security failed. She was vulnerable, exposed. The people who would like to hurt me now know that she can be reached, which means anyone associated with saving her life can also be reached. You're a liability, Miss Smith, and I protect my liabilities. I'm not your property. No, you're your mother's daughter, the woman who calls you every Sunday at 3 p.m., who works at Rosie's Diner in South Carolina, who has a mortgage that's 3 months behind, and medical bills from your grandmother's hospice care that she'll be paying off for the next 5 years. Laura's vision went red at the edges. "You researched my family?" "I researched everything." His voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. "I know your GPA. I know your course load. I know you work 2 jobs to cover what your scholarship doesn't. I know you send half of everything you make home. I know you haven't bought new shoes in 2 years. And I know that if something happens to you because you saved my mother's life, your family loses everything. So this is for my protection. This is for everyone's protection. You live under my roof. My people watch over you. You continue your studies without worrying about money or safety or any of the 1,000 things that were crushing you before. And when I'm satisfied the danger has passed, you go back to your normal life. That's the deal." Laura looked at him, this man in his perfect suit with his empty eyes and his absolute certainty. She thought about her mother's voice on the phone, tired and hopeful. She thought about her dorm room with its eviction notice. She thought about the choice she'd made in that alley and how every choice since then had felt like no choice at all. How long? Until I say otherwise. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. Laura closed her eyes, opened them, met his gaze without flinching. "I want it in writing, contract, terms, everything, and I want a clause that says when this is over, you leave me and my family alone, completely." Ye-jun pulled a folder from the desk behind him. The contract was already prepared, already printed, already waiting for her signature. Of course it was. The house wasn't a house, it was a compound, all steel and glass and security systems that probably cost more than most people's homes. Laura's room was a suite larger than her entire dorm building, with a bathroom that had heated floors and a closet that echoed when she walked into it. Her textbooks arrived the next day, new ones to replace what had been ruined in the rain. Her class schedule was rearranged to allow for security considerations. A car and driver appeared to take her to campus. It was a golden cage wrapped in expensive leather and good intentions, and Laura hated every second of it. She was studying for her biochemistry midterm at the dining room table because her suite felt too isolated, too much like hiding, when she heard the voices. Ye-jun's voice, cold and controlled. "I don't care about his excuses. He failed. Make sure he understands what failure costs in this organization. His family? His family should have taught him competence." Laura's pen stilled on her notebook. She shouldn't be listening. She should go back to her suite, close the door, pretend she was anywhere else. But something kept her frozen, kept her listening to the casual brutality of a world she'd only ever seen in movies. "Send the message," Ye-jun continued. "Make it visible. I want everyone to understand that my mother's safety is not negotiable." The voices faded. Footsteps approached. Laura forced herself to focus on her notes. The Krebs cycle, ATP synthesis, anything except the conversation she'd just overheard. Ye-jun appeared in the doorway. He'd loosened his tie, shed his jacket, and somehow that made him look more dangerous rather than less. He studied her for a moment, and Laura wondered if he knew she'd been listening. "You should study in your room," he said. "I concentrate better down here." That wasn't a suggestion. "And I'm not one of your employees." Laura set down her pen, meeting his eyes. "The contract says I live here. It doesn't say I have to hide." Something flickered across his face, surprise maybe, or amusement. "You heard." "I heard. And I'm trying very hard to remember that the man who just ordered someone to send a message is the same man who paid for my scholarship. It's not easy." Ye-jun moved further into the room, and Laura fought the instinct to lean back. He stopped at the other end of the table, hands braced on the dark wood. "Do you want to know what happens in my world when someone fails to protect what matters, when incompetence puts lives at risk?" "I'm not sure I want to know. My mother nearly died because someone wasn't doing their job, someone who was paid well, trained extensively, and trusted with a single responsibility. He failed, and in failing, he made her vulnerable to people who would use her to hurt me. That's not a mistake, that's a betrayal." "So you punish his family." Laura's voice was sharper than she intended. I make an example that ensures it never happens again. That's how you keep people safe in a world where mercy is seen as weakness. That's how you become a monster. Yes, he said it simply, without defense or apology. It is. They stared at each other across the expensive table in the expensive house, and Laura saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Exhaustion, the kind of tired that came from carrying weight no one else could see. "Your biochemistry exam is on Friday," he said, changing subjects with whiplash speed. "Do you need anything? Additional study materials? Tutoring?" The shift was so abrupt, it took Laura a moment to respond. No, I'm fine. You haven't eaten since breakfast. I'm not hungry. That's not what I asked. Yejun pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. "Dinner will be ready in 30 minutes. You'll eat. You're not my father. No, I'm the man keeping you alive. Eat." He left before she could argue, and Laura sat there surrounded by her textbooks and her biochemistry notes, trying to reconcile the man who'd just ordered violence with the man who'd noticed she'd skipped lunch. 30 minutes later, as promised, dinner appeared, brought by staff who moved like ghosts and disappeared just as quickly. It was Korean food, beautifully plated, and far too much for one person. She stared at it, then at the empty chair across from her. She found Yejun in his office, paperwork spread across his desk, his phone on speaker playing what sounded like a very tense business call in Korean. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway, his expression questioning. Laura held up a plate. "You ordered enough food for 2. He ended the call without preamble, without explanation, just a quick sentence in Korean and a press of a button. "You should eat in your room. You should stop telling me what to do." Laura set down the plate on his desk, pushing aside paperwork that probably detailed things she shouldn't know about. The deal was protection, not isolation. Protection requires isolation. Protection requires me to stay sane. And if I have to eat one more meal alone in that giant suite pretending I'm not living in a crime lord's house, I'm going to lose my mind. She sat in the chair across from him without waiting for permission. "So we're eating, together, and you're going to tell me why someone who clearly doesn't want company ordered enough food for 2 people. Yejun looked at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Then, slowly, he pulled the plate closer and picked up a pair of chopsticks. "My mother used to say that eating alone was how you forgot you were human," he said quietly. Laura picked up her own chopsticks. "Your mother is a smart woman. She's the only reason I'm capable of anything resembling mercy. Then I'm glad I saved her." They ate in silence for a while, the only sound the clicking of chopsticks and the distant hum of the compound's security systems. Laura steadied him when she thought he wasn't looking, the precise way he moved, the controlled economy of every gesture, the walls built so high around him that she wondered if anyone had ever seen what was behind them. "You asked how long," Yejun said suddenly. "Until the protection ends." "I did. My mother wants to meet with you, tomorrow, properly this time, without the hospital and the panic." He set down his chopsticks. "She wants to thank you. And she wants to evaluate you." "Evaluate me? For what?" Yejun's eyes met hers, and for the first time since she'd met him, Laura saw something that might have been uncertainty. "To see if you can survive in our world. Because if my mother has her way, Miss Smith, you're not going anywhere." The university library had always been Laura's sanctuary, 4 floors of silence and safety, where the worst thing that could happen was a paper cut or a crashed laptop. She'd spent hundreds of hours here, tucked into her favorite corner on the 3rd floor where the afternoon light hit just right and the medical reference section was close enough to grab without losing her seat. That safety was an illusion. She learned that when she opened her biochemistry textbook and found the photograph. It was her mother, standing outside Rosie's diner, keys in hand, completely unaware that someone had been watching her.
The image was crisp, professional, recent, taken maybe a week ago based on the seasonal decorations visible in the diner's window, and underneath it, written in neat handwriting that managed to be both elegant and threatening, "We know where she works. We know when she's alone. Tell Lee Ye-jun that debts run both ways." Laura's hands shook so badly the textbook slipped from her grip, hitting the table with a sound that felt too loud in the library's hush. The photograph fluttered to the floor, her mother's smiling face looking up at her from the carpet, and something inside Laura cracked. She grabbed her phone with numb fingers, found the contact that had been added without her permission, and pressed call. Ye-jun answered before the first ring finished. "What's wrong?" Not a question, a statement, like he'd been waiting for disaster. "Someone left something in my textbook, a photo of my mother, with a message. Don't touch it. Don't move. Where are you?" "Library, 3rd floor, east corner by the—" "I know where you are. Stay visible, stay near people. I'm 10 minutes out." The line went dead. Laura stayed frozen in her chair, staring at the photograph on the floor, trying to understand how her life had gone from cramming for exams to receiving threats against her family. Students moved around her, oblivious, complaining about workloads and relationship drama, problems that felt like they belonged to a different species. She didn't see Ye-jun arrive. One moment she was alone, and the next he was there, 6 men in dark suits fanning out around her corner of the library with the silent efficiency of a military operation. Students looked up, startled, some reaching for phones before thinking better of it when they saw the expressions on those faces. Ye-jun crouched beside her chair, his eyes scanning her like he was checking for damage. "Are you hurt?" "No, just scared." "Good. Fear keeps you smart." He picked up the photograph with gloved hands. When had he put on gloves? And studied it with an expression that made Laura's blood run cold. She'd seen him angry before, seen him dangerous. This was different. This was absolute zero, the kind of cold that burned. "Korean script," he said quietly, showing one of his men. "Park family. They're making a move." The man responded in rapid Korean, and Ye-jun's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He turned to Laura, and when he spoke, his voice was gentle in a way that somehow made everything worse. "Pack your things. You're leaving campus early today. I have a study group in—" "You're leaving now," he stood, offering him his hand, "and you're not coming back until I've handled this." Laura looked at his outstretched hand, at the photograph of her mother, at the library that no longer felt safe. She took his hand.
The drive back to the compound was silent. Ye-jun made 3 phone calls in Korean, each one shorter and more clipped than the last. Laura caught enough to understand he was mobilizing something: people, resources, violence waiting to be unleashed. She stared out the window and tried not to think about what handling this meant in his world. They pulled through the compound gates, and Ye-jun finally turned to face her. "Your mother is already protected. I had people watching her the moment you moved in here. They've been upgraded to active detail. No one gets within 50 feet of her without going through 6 layers of security." "You've been watching my mother?" "I've been protecting her. There's a difference." He opened his door, then paused. "The people who left that photograph made a mistake. They showed me they're desperate enough to threaten civilians. Desperate enemies make stupid choices, and I'm very good at capitalizing on stupidity." "What are you going to do?" Ye-jun's smile was terrifying. "I'm going to remind them why threatening my family is a death sentence, and you, Miss Smith, are family now, whether you like it or not." He was gone before she could respond, striding into the compound with his phone already at his ear, and Laura sat in the car wondering when she'd stopped being a person and started being a chess piece in a game she didn't understand. Min-seo was waiting in the compound's formal sitting room, a space Laura had avoided because it felt like a museum, all expensive furniture and artwork that probably cost more than small countries. The older woman looked completely different from the terrified, crumpled figure Laura had found in that alley. She sat with perfect posture in a silk handbook, tea service arranged on the low table before her, looking every inch the matriarch of a criminal empire. "Come, sit."
Min-seo's English was better than Laura remembered, only slightly accented. "We have much to discuss." Laura sat, feeling underdressed in her campus hoodie and jeans. "Mrs. Lee, I don't think—" "You saved my life. That gives you the right to call me Min-seo." She poured tea with practiced elegance, and Laura noticed her hands were completely steady, no trace of the panic attack that had nearly killed her. "My son tells me you received a threat today. I don't want to burden you with—" "Child," Min-seo's voice was gentle but firm, "you are living in my home, under my family's protection. You are already burdened. The question is whether you understand the weight you're carrying." Laura accepted the teacup, its delicate porcelain warm against her palms. "I'm starting to." "No, you're starting to see the surface." Min-seo took a sip of her own tea, studying Laura over the rim. "Do you know why I was in that alley?" "Your son said there was a security failure." "My son believes what I let him believe. The truth is more complicated." Min-seo set down her cup. "I was testing the new security detail. I wanted to see how quickly they would notice I'd slipped away, how efficiently they would respond. It's a test I run every few months. Usually they find me within 10 minutes. That day they took 20, and in those 20 minutes I had a genuine panic attack brought on by stress and arrhythmia." "You faked being lost to test your own security?" "I survived 40 years in this world by being smarter than the men who wanted to kill me. Testing security isn't paranoia, it's survival." Min-seo's eyes were sharp, assessing. "You have good instincts. You stayed when you should have run. But instinct isn't enough in our world. You need knowledge, and I'm going to teach you." "Teach me what?" "How to survive, how to think like we think, how to see threats before they arrive." Min-seo leaned forward. "My son believes he can protect you with guards and guns. He's wrong. The best protection is making you too dangerous to touch, and that starts with understanding the rules." "What rules?" "Rule 1. Mercy is a luxury we cannot afford. The moment you hesitate, you die." Laura's throat tightened. "I became a doctor to save lives, not end them. And that oath will get you killed if you don't understand when to break it." Min-seo's voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "The people who left that photograph of your mother, they're counting on your mercy. They think you'll convince my son to negotiate rather than retaliate. They're wrong. But if you were alone, if you didn't have Ye-jun's protection, your mercy would be your death." "So you're saying I should become like you? Like him?" "I'm saying knowledge is a weapon. Understanding how we think, how we operate, how we make decisions. That knowledge keeps you alive. You don't have to become us, but you need to understand us." Min-seo refreshed Laura's tea. "Rule 2. Loyalty is currency. In our world, trust is earned in blood and maintained through absolute reliability. My son is loyal to me because I have never wavered in my loyalty to him. The people who work for him stay because he protects them as fiercely as they protect him. And now you are part of that circle. Your loyalty will be tested, probably soon." "I didn't ask for any of this." "No one ever does, but you made a choice in that alley, Laura, and choices have consequences that ripple further than you can see." Min-seo's expression softened slightly. "You could have kept running. You could have called for help and disappeared. You stopped. You stayed. You put a stranger's life before your own future. That makes you very stupid or very brave. I'm hoping for brave." Laura set down her cup, meeting Min-seo's eyes. "What's Rule 3? Min-seo smiled. It was the first genuine smile Laura had seen on her face, and it transformed her from elegant matriarch to something almost warm.
Rule 3. Never let them see you weak. The moment they think you can be broken, they'll try. So you learn to hide the breaks. You learn to bleed internally, and you learn to smile while plotting their destruction. She paused. "You have good instincts, Laura. Now let me teach you how to weaponize them." They spent the next 3 hours in that sitting room, and Laura learned more about violence, strategy, and the mathematics of organized crime than any medical textbook could teach about healing. Min-seo spoke with the casual precision of a professor, explaining territory disputes like they were chess games, describing power structures like they were anatomical diagrams. And somewhere in that education, Laura began to understand why Ye-jun had become what he was. When you were raised by a woman who could discuss assassination attempts over tea, violence became a language you spoke fluently. "Your professor," Min-seo said suddenly, checking her delicate watch. "Dr. Harrison, the one who refused to let you retake your exam. My son had him investigated." Laura's stomach dropped. "What did he find?" "That your professor has been receiving payments from the Park family for the past 6 months, the same family that left you that photograph." Min-seo's voice was calm, but her eyes were cold. "He was instructed to fail you, to ensure you lost your scholarship, to isolate you from any institutional support. The alley, my attack, it was all designed to put you in a position where you'd have to choose between school and helping me. They thought you'd choose school. When you didn't, they needed a backup plan. He sabotaged me on purpose because someone paid him? Everything I worked for, everything I sacrificed, it was destroyed because of money. Not just money, strategy. You became valuable the moment you saved me. They wanted to make sure you stayed vulnerable, easy to manipulate, desperate enough to maybe turn against us." Min-seo stood, smoothing her hanbok. "The question is, what do you want done about it?" "What do you mean?" "My son will kill him, slowly if I ask, but I think you should be the one to decide his fate. You're the one he wronged." Laura's medical oath screamed at her, "First, do no harm," but the oath didn't cover what to do when someone had deliberately tried to destroy your life, had taken payment to ensure you failed, had been complicit in a gang's manipulation. "I want him exposed," Laura said slowly. "I want the university to know what he did. I want him to lose everything he used his position to protect, his tenure, his reputation, his career. I want him to feel exactly what he tried to make me feel." Min-seo nodded. "A precise strike, surgical. My son won't like it. He prefers permanent solutions. Then he'll have to deal with disappointment." "Good." Min-seo's smile was approving. "You're learning. Come, we'll tell him together. Let's see if he listens." Ye-jun didn't listen. Laura knew this the moment she and Min-seo entered his office and found him on the phone, his voice carrying the particular quality that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. "I don't care if he's tenured. I don't care if he's protected. I want him erased." "Ye-jun." Min-seo's voice cut through the room like a blade. He looked up, saw both of them, and Laura watched the calculation happen behind his eyes. "I'll call you back." He ended the call, setting the phone down with deliberate care. "Mother, Miss Smith, I assume you're here about the professor." "Laura has a plan for handling him. So do I. Hers involves exposure and professional destruction. Yours involves a shallow grave. I prefer her approach." Ye-jun's jaw tightened. He was paid to sabotage her, to make her vulnerable to our enemies. That's not a professional failing, that's an act of war. "It's also my decision," Laura said, stepping forward. "He wronged me. I get to choose the response. You don't understand what you're asking." "I understand perfectly. You want him dead because it's clean, final, and sends a message. I want him destroyed because it's personal, visible, and ruins everything he values. Both are valid. Mine doesn't create a body." They stared at each other across his desk, and Laura refused to look away. She'd learned enough from Min-seo to know that backing down now meant losing not just this argument, but her credibility in this world where strength was the only currency that mattered. "If I do this your way," Ye-jun said, "and he retaliates, then you can kill him, but let me try first. You're too merciful for this world. Maybe, or maybe I'm smart enough to know that creating martyrs isn't always the best strategy." Laura moved closer to the desk.
Your mother said loyalty is currency, so let me earn mine. Let me handle this my way, and if I fail, you can handle it yours." Min-seo made a small sound that might have been approval or amusement. Ye-jun looked between them, and something in his expression softened so slightly Laura almost missed it. "1 week," he said. "You have 1 week to destroy him quietly. After that, I do it my way. Deal." Laura turned to leave, and his voice stopped her at the door. "Miss Smith?" "Yes?" "You're learning faster than I expected. I'm not sure if that should worry me or impress me. Maybe both," Laura said, and left before he could see her smile. The library was supposed to be safe. Laura knew better now, but old habits died hard, and she needed access to the university's database for her research. Ye-jun had been against it, but after 3 days of arguing, he agreed on the condition that she have 2 bodyguards in the building and stay visible all the time. She was visible, she was following the rules, and somehow they still got to her. It happened in the stacks, in the medical section where natural light didn't reach, and the fluorescent bulbs created more shadows than illumination. Laura was reaching for a reference book when someone grabbed her behind, a cloth pressed over her mouth and nose before she could scream. The chemical smell registered first, chloroform. Her medical training supplied helpfully, even as consciousness started to slip. She tried to fight, tried to remember the self-defense basics Ye-jun's people had been teaching her, but her limbs were already going heavy, her vision tunneling. Her last thought before the darkness took her was that Ye-jun had been right. Mercy was going to get her killed. She woke to pain. Her head throbbed, her mouth tasted like chemicals, and her hands were zip-tied behind her back. Laura forced her eyes open, blinking against the dim light, trying to assess her situation the way Min-seo had taught her. Concrete floor, metal walls, industrial space, maybe a warehouse, single door visible, probably locked, 3 men that she could see, all armed, and sitting across from her, looking far too comfortable for someone who'd just committed kidnapping, was a man in an expensive suit who radiated the same kind of cold authority as Ye-jun. Park. Had to be. The rival Min-seo had mentioned. "You're awake. Good." His English was perfect, almost accentless. "I was worried we'd use too much. Dead hostages lose their negotiating value." Laura's medical training kicked in despite her terror. Elevated heart rate but steady, no signs of serious injury, mild concussion possible, dehydration likely. She filed the information away, forcing herself to think clinically rather than panic. "Ye-jun doesn't negotiate," she said, her voice rougher than she'd like. "He will for you. His mother has made it very clear that you're under her personal protection. That makes you valuable." Park leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call him. You're going to tell him that if he wants you back alive, he'll withdraw from the port operations. He has 24 hours to comply. And if he doesn't, then we send you back in pieces." Laura's medical bag. They'd taken her backpack, but had they searched it thoroughly? She'd started carrying a small medical kit after Min-seo insisted. Basic supplies, nothing fancy, but including a scalpel she'd requisitioned from the lab for cutting specimens. Small, sharp, easy to hide. "I need my inhaler," Laura said, forcing her breathing to sound labored. "Asthma. The chloroform triggered an attack. My bag, please." Park studied her, looking for deception. Laura wheezed slightly, knowing her medical knowledge gave her the ability to fake symptoms convincingly. He nodded to one of his men, who retrieved her backpack and dumped its contents on the floor. Textbooks, notes, laptop, and her medical kit, black nylon with a red cross. "Just the kit," she gasped. "Blue inhaler, inside pocket." The man opened it, suspicious, found the inhaler, genuine because she did have mild exercise-induced asthma, and tossed it to her. "Untie her hands. Can't exactly use it bound." The zip tie came off, and Laura's hands were free. She grabbed the inhaler with shaking fingers, took 2 puffs, and let her breathing steady while her mind raced through options. The scalpel was in the kit's side pocket, small enough to palm, sharp enough to do damage if she was smart about it. Min-seo's voice in her head: "Never let them see you weak. Knowledge is a weapon. Mercy is a luxury." And Ye-jun's training: "If you're ever in danger, don't wait to be saved. Create an opportunity and take it." Laura's oath as a doctor said first, do no harm, but the oath didn't cover self-defense, didn't cover survival, didn't cover what to do when harm was coming for you whether you wanted it or not. She made her choice. "Thank you," Laura said, setting down the inhaler. Her hand brushed the medical kit, fingers finding the side pocket. The scalpel was there, small and deadly, sliding into her palm with practiced ease. "I feel better already." Park's phone rang. He answered in Korean, his expression hardening as he listened. Laura caught enough to understand. Ye-jun was mobilizing. He'd found them or was close to finding them. Time was running out. Which meant time was running out for her, too. Park ended the call, his face dark with anger. "Tie her back up. We're moving locations." The man approached her with new zip tie in hand, and Laura moved. Medical school had taught her exactly where to cut for maximum effect with minimal force. The carotid wasn't the target, too lethal, too much blood. The brachial artery in the arm would incapacitate without killing, 3 inches below the shoulder, 2 inches medial from the midline. The scalpel flashed. The man screamed. Blood sprayed across the concrete floor, and Laura was moving before conscious thought caught up, grabbing her medical kit and running for the door she'd spotted when she first woke. Footsteps behind her, shouting. The door was locked, but the lock was simple, the kind she could pick with the tension wrench in her kit. Ye-jun had insisted she learn, had made her practice until her fingers bled. The lock gave, the door opened, and Laura ran out into a warehouse district she didn't recognize, soaked in rain she hadn't realized was falling, running the way she'd run to that exam that felt like a lifetime ago. Behind her, engines roared to life. They were coming, but ahead of her, other engines, black SUVs with familiar plates, screeching to a halt in a wall of metal and glass. Doors opened, men emerged with guns drawn, and Ye-jun stepped out, his face a mask of focused violence that would have terrified her a month ago. Now it just looked like safety. Laura collapsed into his arms, and he caught her without hesitation, his hands checking her for injuries with surprising gentleness. "Are you hurt?" His voice was rough, urgent.
"Minor cuts. Concussion, maybe. I'm okay." She pulled back to look at him. "I got out. I didn't wait to be rescued. I got out." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, respect, something else she couldn't name. "You're bleeding." "Not my blood. I used my scalpel on one of them. Brachial artery. Non-lethal, but incapacitating. He'll need medical attention." She was babbling, shock setting in now that adrenaline was fading. "I broke my oath. First, do no harm. I harmed him. I chose survival over healing, and I'd do it again." "Laura." Ye-jun's hands framed her face, forcing her to focus on him. "You survived. That's not breaking an oath. That's honoring the life you've spent years learning to protect, including your own." Behind him, his men were advancing on the warehouse. Gunfire echoed in the distance. Laura didn't look, didn't need to. She knew what was happening, knew what Ye-jun's handling it looked like. "Get her to the car," Ye-jun told one of his men. "Call Dr. Choi, full examination. And someone get me Park's location. I want to finish this personally." "Wait," Laura grabbed his sleeve. "The man I cut, he needs medical attention. Please, I know what you're going to do, but at least let him be treated first." Ye-jun looked at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "You're asking me to help someone who kidnapped you?" "I'm asking you to let me be a doctor for 5 minutes. Please." The silence stretched. His men waited for orders. Rain fell around them, mixing with the blood on Laura's hands, and she watched him make a decision that would define everything that came next. "Fine. 5 minutes. You stabilize him, then he tells me everything he knows about Park's operation. Then he dies." Ye-jun's voice was flat. "That's the compromise. Take it or leave it."
It wasn't mercy, but it was acknowledgement that she still held on to pieces of herself that this world hadn't corrupted yet. Laura nodded. She spent the next 5 minutes being exactly what she'd trained to be, a healer, efficient and professional, treating a wound she'd inflicted with the same care she'd use on any patient. The man whose arm she'd sliced stared at her with a mixture of fear and confusion, and when she finished bandaging him, he spoke in halting English. "Why help me?" "Because I'm a doctor, it's what I do." "Even for enemies?" "Especially for enemies. That's the whole point." Yejin listened to this exchange from the doorway, his expression unreadable. When Laura finished and stepped away, he moved in close enough that only she could hear him. "You're too good for this world." "Maybe, or maybe I'm exactly what this world needs." The aftermath was messy. Park's operation was dismantled within 48 hours, his people either absorbed into Yejun's organization or scattered to other cities. The warehouse where Laura had been held was sanitized, evidence erased, the whole incident reduced to a footnote in a gang war that the public would never know happened. Dr. Harrison's fate was more public. Laura's exposure plan involved leaked emails, financial records, and testimony from other students he'd sabotaged. The university had no choice but to act. His tenure was revoked. His publications were investigated. His career ended not with violence, but with shame, exactly as Laura had wanted. She should have felt victorious. Instead, she just felt tired. Min-seo found her in the compound's library, a real library, not the university kind, with first editions and comfortable chairs and the kind of quiet that felt earned rather than enforced. "You're troubled," Min-seo said, settling into the chair beside her. "I hurt someone, on purpose, with medical knowledge I swore to use for healing. And it saved your life. That doesn't make it easier." "No, it doesn't." Min-seo was quiet for a moment. "When I was young, I believed in absolutes, right and wrong, good and evil, black and white. Then I married into this family, and I learned that the world is made of grays. You can be a healer and a fighter. You can save lives and take them. You can be merciful and merciless. The question isn't which one you are, it's which one you choose to be in each moment. What if I choose wrong? Then you learn, you adjust, you survive." Min-seo placed a hand over Laura's. "You're not becoming like us, child. You're becoming yourself in a world that demands more than you expected to give. That's different." "Is it? Ask me again in a year." The formal dinner was Min-seo's idea, a celebration, she called it, though Laura suspected it was more of a declaration. The compound's dining room was set with crystal and silver, staff moving silently to serve courses that probably cost more than Laura's old scholarship. Yejun sat at the head of the table, in a black suit that made him look like he was attending a funeral, or planning one. Laura sat to his right, still wearing the dress Min-seo had insisted she buy, feeling like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. "You've been living here for 6 weeks, Min-seo said, raising her glass. "I think it's time we made your position official." "Official how?" Laura asked warily. "You're no longer a guest under protection. You're family. Specifically, you're the family doctor. Official title, official role, official standing within the organization." Min-seo's smile was warm, but her eyes were calculating. "It comes with benefits and responsibilities. I'm still in medical school." "Which you'll finish with full support, but when you're not studying, you'll be available for the family. Discreet medical care, no questions asked, no records kept. And in exchange, you'll have access to resources most doctors dream of: research funding, equipment, facilities, and protection that extends not just to you, but to your mother, your extended family, anyone you care about." Laura looked at Yejun. "Did you know about this?"
"It was my idea." His voice was matter-of-fact. "You've proven you can survive in this world. You've proven you're valuable. And after the kidnapping, it's clear that being seen as temporary makes you a target. But if you're officially part of the family structure, touching you means declaring war on the entire organization. It's better protection than bodyguards. You're making me a target by making me valuable. I'm making you untouchable by making you essential." He leaned forward. "You saved my mother. You survived an attack. You made decisions under pressure that most people in this organization couldn't make, and you did it while maintaining your principles. That's rare, valuable, worth protecting. Worth controlling, you mean. Worth investing in." Min-seo's voice was gentle. "Laura, you could walk away tomorrow. We'd ensure your safety, your mother's safety, and you'd never hear from us again. But I don't think you want to walk away. I think you found something here. Purpose, family, a place where your skills matter in ways your university never recognized." Laura looked between them, this elegant matriarch and her dangerous son, these people who'd entered her life through chaos and somehow become constants. She thought about the alley where this started, about the choice she'd made to stop running. What happens if I say yes? You finish medical school, you become the doctor you always wanted to be, and sometimes when we need you, you use those skills to keep dangerous people alive. Yejun's eyes met hers. "You don't have to like us. You don't have to approve of what we do. You just have to be there when we're bleeding. And if I want out later, then we'll discuss it. But I don't think you will." Min-seo raised her glass higher. "To Laura Smith, healer, survivor, family." Yejun raised his glass. His men stationed around the room raised theirs, all waiting for her response. Laura thought about mercy and knowledge, and the gray spaces between right and wrong. She thought about her oath and what it meant to heal people who hurt others. She thought about her mother, safe because of the protection this family provided. She thought about who she'd been 6 weeks ago, running through rain, desperate and alone, and who she was now. She raised her glass. "To family," she said, and drank. The taste was bitter and sweet, like medicine, like survival, like choices that couldn't be undone. 3 months later, Laura stood in Yejun's office reviewing medical files for his inner circle, routine checkups, prescriptions, the kind of care that couldn't be documented in official channels. She'd finished her midterms with perfect scores. Her mother had been relocated to a safer neighborhood with a scholarship that was really just Yejun's people taking care of expenses. And Laura had treated her first gunshot wound last week without flinching. Min-seo was right. The world was made of grays. "You're smiling," Yejun observed from his desk. "I'm thinking about how far I've come from that alley." "Regrets?" Laura considered. "Ask me again in a year." He almost smiled. "My mother said the same thing. Your mother is a wise woman. She's also planning your graduation party 2 years in advance. Fair warning." "Of course she is." Laura closed the file. "I need to order more supplies, and someone needs to teach your men better wound care. I can't keep stitching up infections because they think superglue is medical grade." "I'll handle it. See that you do." She turned to leave, comfortable now in this space that had once terrified her. "Oh, and Yejun." "Yes?" "Thank you for the scholarship, for my mother, for giving me a choice even when you didn't have to. You earned it." His voice was quiet. "And Laura, thank you for stopping in that alley, for staying when you should have run." She smiled. "Best, worst decision I ever made." The rain fell outside the compound's windows, and Laura watched it for a moment before heading back to her suite, her home now, really. She had midterms to study for, patients to check on, and a family dinner with Min-seo where they'd probably discuss strategy disguised as gossip. Somewhere in the transition from running through rain to standing in safety, Laura had become someone she barely recognized. Not worse, not better, just different. A healer in a house of violence, a doctor in a world of crime, a woman who'd chosen mercy when she could have chosen indifference, and paid for that mercy by learning when mercy wasn't enough. Her phone buzzed. A text from Min-seo. "Family meeting tomorrow. Wear something nice. We're discussing expansion." Laura texted back, "Define nice, and do I need to bring my medical kit?" "Always bring your kit, dear. You never know when someone will need stitches." "That's what I was afraid of." She set down her phone and looked at her reflection in the window, natural afro grown out, confidence she hadn't possessed 3 months ago, and eyes that had seen more violence than any pre-med student should know existed. She was still Laura Smith, future doctor, but she was something else now.
She was family. She was protected. She was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with scalpels and everything to do with knowledge. And somewhere in the compound, Ye-jun was probably handling business the way he always did, with cold efficiency and absolute authority. But when he came home, whenever that was, Laura would be there, ready to patch up his people, argue about his methods, and exist in the gray space between healing and harm. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she'd chosen. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.